Hi everyone, this is Verona from Casey Cardinia Libraries. Thank you all for attending the Secrets of Egypt and the Nile Life event. Today we are virtually going to go together to a land of legend and mystery, a gift of the Nile, guardian of the past, capturing the hearts of people all over the world. Get inspired to start your own story, where it all begins. We are going to learn about a civilization known as the Mother of the World, the most fascinating place on earth, the land of pharaohs, Egypt. Please let me introduce and welcome our guest speaker from Egypt. Our guest speaker today is a tour guide and Egyptologist since 2001. With more than 19 years of experience, she has a bachelor degree in archaeology and tourist guides from Cairo University. She is also a member of World Federation of Tourist Guides Association and a member of Egyptian General Tourist Guides Syndicate. Please welcome with me the archaeologist Rasha Hamid from Egypt. Welcome, Rasha. Lovely to have you here.
Hello, Verona, thank you so much for this nice introduction. Hello, guys. This is Rasha from Egypt. It's my pleasure to be with you today. I'm pretty sure that majority of you heard about Egypt before. Maybe you didn't have the chance to visit it, but let me give you a little bit of information about Egypt and also about the ancient Egyptian history of this lovely country.
Thank you
First of
so much,
all,
Rasha. That's now the presentation is up for everybody to see, so we can start now. Thank you so much.
welcome anytime, of course. Okay, first of all, I would love to tell you a little bit about the country. Actually, Egypt is situated to the northeast of Africa. If you look here to the first slide, Egypt is a country that covers an area of about 1 million square meter. If you look to the map, you would notice that it is totally like a desert place. The only green area we do have here is the very narrow strip that goes around the River Nile. This is where all the civilization began here in Egypt. And actually, we do have 100 million of the people who lives here in Egypt, and we live around this very narrow strip. The River Nile here in Egypt, we name it always the artery of life because this is the only source of water we do have here. And from a long time ago, actually, all people lived around the River Nile and around the valley of the River Nile. We could say that the River Nile actually is the largest and the longest river ever in the world. If you look here in the second picture to the left-hand side, you could see that the River Nile started in Lake Victoria, which is situated in to the south of the African continent. Lake Victoria shared the borders between Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. And actually, the River Nile runs in 10 countries until it reaches Egypt and power its water in the Mediterranean Sea. The River Nile is the longest river ever in the world and runs for about 6,600 kilometers. Um, from the during the pharaonic time, actually, or we could say during the ancient time, the River Nile was always the source of water for the ancient Egyptians. And we know that the historian Herodotus, when he visited Egypt about around 300 BC, he said, Egypt is the gift of the River Nile because he knew that without the River Nile, Egypt would not exist. It would be a completely desert place. This is why when we found the traces of the civilization here in Egypt, we found it always around the valley of the River Nile. And we could say that we started to know about the history of Egypt since about 5,000 BC. Yes, we found traces of people lived around the bit of the River Nile since then. But we could say that the history of Egypt goes a little bit, a little bit earlier than this. Egyptians lived in the Lower Egypt in that time. They lived even in the desert because the climate was totally different than what we have nowadays. It was heavy raining everywhere. People were moving from a place to another because actually it was quite easy for them to find food and water. So they didn't need to settle in only one place. But we could say around 5,000 BC, climate changed it completely. And people start to settle around the branches of the River Nile and they start to establish small societies. And day by day, the Egypt or the Egyptian land was divided into two countries. They were totally separate than each other. Each one of them had its sacred symbols, its gods, and also its rulers. And it remained like this to the beginning of 3100 BC. If you look here to the next slide, you could see the two sacred symbols of the two lands before the unification. I'm talking between 5000 BC to 3100 BC. To the right-hand side, you could see the lotus flower, which was the sacred symbol of Upper Egypt in that time. And to the right-hand side, you could see the lotus, the papyrus flower, which was the sacred symbol of Lower Egypt. Actually, here in Egypt, when we say Upper Egypt means South Egypt, and we say Lower Egypt, it means North Egypt. Because if you look to the river Nile here, it runs from the south to the north. So the highest point in the land in Egypt is in the south, and the lowest is in the north. 3100 BC, a king named King Narmer or Minas unified the two lands together. And he decided to take his capital very, very close to our actual capital nowadays, Cairo. He named it Eneb or the White Wall. He chose the place to be the main capital of the two lands, and he chose the cemetery for all over Egypt. Actually, we could say that King Mina or King Minas unified the two lands and established the first royal family ruled all over Egypt. How many royal families we had in that time? 30 royal families. The first one established by King Minas or Narmer, and the last one ended by the innovation of Alexander the Great to Egypt, 332 BC. We could say that ancient Egyptians were obsessed with life, but also they were obsessed with death. Because for them, life was like a very, very short time. Even if people lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, they will die. And they didn't look to the death at the end of the life. No, they looked to it as intermediate between the short life that we have here and the eternal life they are going to have in the nether world. This is why they give a great care to their tombs. And when we make discoveries here in Egypt in order to understand more about the ancient Egyptian history, we always found tombs. The oldest cemetery we do have here in Egypt is Saqqara. And Saqqara was very close to the first capital of unified Egypt, which is Memphis or Eneb as they name it in that time. And we found the oldest tomb we have in this place looks like a rectangular building, like the picture in front of us here. We name it nowadays in Egypt mastaba. Mastaba was like just a dumb building, like, a solid building, has no buildings inside it, no rooms, no decorations or anything. And it was normally built out of the mud brick tiles because the mud brick tiles was the material they had in that time. It was pretty easy to shape it, and it was quite easy to carry it from a place to another. During the first royal family and the second royal family, the shape of the tomb was always like that. Looks like the shape of the mastaba. The internal design of the mastaba, if you look to the next slide here, you could see that it looks like it has like a shaft underneath it, and the shaft led to the burial chamber of the person or the dead person. We could say that this mastaba was always belonged to pharaohs because majority of the tombs we found dating back to the pharaonic period was belonged to the pharaohs and the high officials. We could say the people who could afford to have a nice tomb. So if you look here to this slide in front of us or this photo, you could see that we do have like a shaft goes underneath the surface of the ground to lead to the burial chamber, which was supposed to be hidden underneath the surface of the ground in order to hide the body of the dead person, or as we name it, the mummy, and all the things we have underneath the tomb. If you look to the picture to the left-hand side, we could say that this is the regular mastaba we had during the first and the second royal family. Later, from the end of the third royal family to the end of the sixth royal family, we start to have lovely mastabas for the high officials and the royal families, the same like the one here to the right-hand side. And it has chambers, it has decorations and illustrations on the walls. It has also statues for the owner of the tomb as well. From the beginning of the third royal family, they start to change the shape of the tomb. And they start to build the tomb looks like stepped mastaba or a stepped pyramid as we name it. A mastaba, as I told you, is the rectangular building, but they build mastabas on the top of each other. This building in front of us, we name it the Step Pyramid of King Zoser. And we could say,
Sorry, Rasha, for interrupting you. It looks like the slide is not moving. Could you please take a control again from my presentation?
actually, it is moving in front of me here.
I'm just getting a record from Courtney saying that's not moving. Just let's check this one.
Would you like?
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Courtney. All right. Thanks, Rasha. Sorry about that.
It's okay, no problems. So this building in front of us here is the Step Pyramid of King Zoser, the founder of the third royal family. And we could say that this building in front of us here, is the oldest stone building in the whole world, and it is dating back to 2600 BC. The architect or the engineer who bought the design of this tomb, his name is Imhotep or Imhotep. And actually, Imhotep was very, very famous during the Pharaonic time and even during the Greek Roman time as well, because they looked to him as the most, intelligent engineer, because he changed the material from the mud brick and he started to use the limestone, which was quite hard to quarry in that time, and to bring it from the quarries to the spot where they're going to build the pyramid of the king. He changed also the shape from a mastaba into a step pyramid. And maybe that was because of their religion, because they start to think in that time that the soul of the dead person leaves the body, goes up to the horizon or to the paradise. So they start to think that maybe that would be a great help for the soul to use the steps of this pyramid to ascend up to the paradise, and again to come back in order to rejoin or to unify with the body, to allow to the dead person to relive eternally. Here we do have 6 steps, and we found out from the excavations of the researches they did for this pyramid that at first it was designed to be a mastaba, a regular mastaba like the tombs of the first and the second royal family. But additions was added to the first and the second step many, many times, and they changed it that upon time. If you look to the next slide, that shows us the interior of the pyramid. Actually, the step pyramid in Saqqara, or the step pyramid of King Zoser, is solid. It has no rooms inside it. All the designs or all the imperial chambers of the king and even his royal family are underneath the surface of the ground. This is the first time in the history we have tombs or burial chambers for the royal family, the whole royal family underneath the pyramid. Normally, when they build the tomb or the tomb for the pharaoh, they build it for only one person, because they looked to the pharaoh in that time as the son of the god, and they wanted to have a great tomb for himself. But maybe because of the additions I told you about, when they added, parts to the first step and the second step, they included the tomb of the whole family of the king. The entrance here is to the right hand side, and you could see that we have an entrance led to a long corridor and that led to the burial chamber. But we found also a shaft exactly in the middle underneath the pyramid. And this shaft runs for about 28 meters in depth. And we thought that it has a religious purpose in that time, and it allows to the soul of the dead person also to use it to go up to the paradise and to come back to the mummy. The step pyramid was, we could say that it was the first try to build a true pyramid in that time. This picture in front of us, it shows the mastabas that dating back to the third, fourth, and fifth royal dynasty. And the mastabas here belongs to the high official and the royal family who lived during the lifetime of the pharaohs of these dynasties. And again, they start to use the limestone exactly the same like the pharaohs, and they start to make the interior of their mastabas looks beautifully decorated. They illustrated religious inscriptions in order to help them to go to the paradise. They start to represent all the food and drinks they have in order to rehab it again in another world. And they even add statues for themselves, like this photo in front of us. With the end of the third royal family and the beginning of the fourth royal family, they start to change the shape of the tomb again. And they start to try to build a true pyramid, a complete shape of a pyramid. And that also was related to their religion because God Ra, or the sun disk, was thought to be the main god of Egypt during the fourth royal family. And they knew that the shape of the pyramid, it looks exactly the same like the rays of the sun. If you look to the rays of the sun comes out from the sun disk, it looks like huge pyramids linked between the earth and the horizon. So here, this pyramid actually, they wanted to build a true pyramid. But we know that when they built this pyramid for the founder of the fourth royal family, King Senefro, they make the angle of the corners quite wide. Here they were almost 52 degrees. And after they built like two-thirds of the pyramid, they noticed a collapse in the ceiling of the pyramid chamber of the king. So they were thinking if they carry on straight, if they make, the corners straight as it was designed, that maybe would cause the collapse of the ceiling, maybe it would crash the pyramid chamber of the king. So they found out that the solution is to change the angle of the upper part and they make it 43 degrees. So once they finish the pyramid, the building of this pyramid, it looks like a pin pyramid. Of course, the king didn't want to have that shape, and he didn't want it to be buried in a such shape. After they worked for almost 20 years to build this pyramid in front of us, they didn't use it for anything. Maybe it was used later because we found a container of the body, or as we name it, a sarcophagus inside it. But King Senefra wasn't buried in this pyramid. It was buried in another one, and they adopted the angle of the upper part in the second pyramid, and it was very close to that one. The most interesting thing about this pyramid in front of us, you would notice that we still have what we name it, the outer cover of the pyramid, or the outer casing blocks. Because when they do build the pyramids, they build them of local blocks of stone, came from quarries quite near to the spot, but they always bring a cover to the pyramid from quarries named Tura. It has a fine block of stone, the quality of the limestone in this place is much higher than the quarries we have in all over Egypt. So they bring the outer cover of the pyramid from this place and they use it to cover the whole pyramid to make it look shiny and look very smooth from outside. This pyramid still have the remains of the outer casing blocks, and we could say this is the proof that all the pyramids we have in Egypt was covered by finer blocks of stone, highly smoothed and highly polished. If you look to the next slide here, you could see the most famous pyramids we do have, the pyramids of the Giza Plateau. These pyramids are the most famous ever around the world, and people thought that here in Egypt we only have 3 pyramids. Actually, we have 120 of the pyramids. The Giza pyramids are the most famous because they were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And we could say they are the only ones that still remained in a very good condition. Actually, the first pyramid of King Khufu, the son of King Senefru, was the largest building was made by human for almost 3,800 years. This pyramid was originally 147-meter high, but we lost to the top of the pyramid. And nowadays it is 143-meter high. This pyramid here was built out of local limestone, and it was covered by finer blocks of limestone from outside. The most mysterious thing about these pyramids so far is how they built them. If you look here to the next slide, you can see one of the theories they said about the building of the pyramids. We don't have any, writings. We don't have any papyrus dating back to the pharaonic time tell us exactly how they built such pyramids in that time. So we have so many theories about the building of the pyramid. One of them was the building of the pyramid take the shape of steps, like the step pyramid, and fill between the steps in order to complete the shape of a pyramid. Another theory said the building of the pyramid was building like ramps from the 4 sides and add the blocks of the stone on the top of it, or drag the blocks of the stone in order to build a complete shape of a pyramid. But the most reasonable theory about the building of the pyramid so far is the building of a spiral ramps goes around the pyramid. And they use it, or they build it of limestone, and they cover it by mud. Then they used the logs of the trees and put them next to each other to work like wheel. So they bought the blocks of the stone, the huge blocks of the stone on the top of it, and they drag it all the way. They build the first course, the second one, third one, until they arrive, it reaches the top of the pyramid. You won't believe it. They used about 2,300,000 blocks of the stone to build the Great Pyramid, or the first pyramid on the plateau of the Giza. And they used about 100,000 of the workers for almost 20 years to build the first pyramid on the plateau of the Giza. During that time, they didn't work the whole year, because the year for the ancient Egyptian was divided into 3 seasons: the season of the plant, season of harvest, and also the season of the flood of the Nile. And during the flood time, that was the most reasonable time to build a pyramid, because the water gets very close to the plateau of the Giza. It was pretty easy for them to use the boats to bring the blocks of the stone from the other quarries or the granite from Aswan. And people get used to work only 4 months every year. So if you calculate it, 4 months every year throughout 20 years, it's almost 6 years only to build the first pyramid on the plateau of the Giza. The first pyramid on the plateau of the Giza, even the internal design of it is the most complete ever amongst all of them. If you look at this picture here, you can see the internal design of the Great Pyramid of King Khufu, and you would see that we have an entrance, again, facing the north. And ancient Egyptians were always trying to make the entrances facing the north, because they do believe that the paradise situated in the pole star or the northern star. So if the entrance facing the north, that would make it pretty easy for the soul to go to the paradise and to find its way back to the mummy. The entrance here leads to a long corridor, and it leads to an chamber or underneath the surface of the ground. This chamber is supposed to be the first burial chamber of the king. This is one of the theories, of course, but actually we found it unfinished. So we think that they changed the design and they included an ascending passage, and they built a chamber named the Queen's Chamber. If you enlarge the picture a little bit, you would find the chamber underneath it written Queen's Chamber, because the first excavators thought that maybe the queens were buried inside the pyramid, the same like the pyramid of Saqqara. But actually, no, because they discovered later 3 small pyramids next to the Great Pyramid belongs to his mother and 2 of his major wives. Maybe this chamber was used only to put the treasures of the king, which means his food, drinks, jewelries, everything he needs with him to in another world. But unfortunately, it was empty when we get inside the pyramid. Also, they built another ascending passage. We name it the Grand Gallery. This gallery is really one of the most impressive parts inside the Pyramid of Giza, because it goes for almost 46 meters long. The ceiling is 9 meters high, and the walls are covered by granite. And the granite here in Egypt, we don't have it in Cairo. We have it in a city named Aswan. And Aswan is almost 1,000 kilometers to the south of Cairo. So just imagine quarrying the granite from Aswan, sail all the way from Aswan to Cairo, loaded, of course, in boats, then unload it to the Giza plateau, drag it all the way up to the pyramid, and use it in order to cover the walls of the internal part of the pyramid. The walls of this, grand gallery looks corbelled, which means looks like the shape of a zigzag, which is amazingly done, and it leads finally to the burial chamber of the king. Here it's very interesting, because they didn't build only the king's chamber or the burial chamber. They added like 5 small chambers on the top of the burial chamber of the king. Do you remember the pyramid, the bent pyramid of King Senefru? I told you that when they keep building the pyramid, they notice a collapse in the ceiling of the burial chamber of the king. So they wanted to avoid that here. This is why they add 5 chambers on the top of the pyramid to reduce the pressure of the upper part and to prevent the blocks of the stone to crash the ceiling of the burial chamber of the king. You would notice also that the upper chamber has like a vaulted ceiling in order to take the pressure on the sides, not directly on the burial chamber of the king. Another interesting thing they discovered recently, or we could say like it was like a new theory about the building of the pyramid. When you see the arrangement of the three pyramids on the plateau of the Giza, and you compare it to the Orion belt, you would find them that they are identical. They are exactly the same. This is one of the theories that started to appear with the beginning of 1960. And one of the scholars said that if you look to the Orion belt and you look to the Giza pyramids, they were identical. And he made researches in that time, and he found that the Orion belt was mentioned in religious inscriptions. We named them the pyramid texts, and they start to appear on the walls of the pyramid from the end of the sixth royal family. For them, the Orion belt for ancient Egyptian, the Orion belt was very, very important because it was part of the Orion constellation, which representing for the ancient Egyptian god Osiris. And God Osiris was the god of the dead for the ancient people or the ancient Egyptians. So they thought that they arranged the Giza pyramids according to them. If you look to the two great pyramids or the two big pyramids and the two big stars, you would find that they are aligned on one line. And the third pyramid, exactly the same like the third star. It's a little bit to the left and it's way smaller than the other two stars. The two great pyramids on the plateau of the Giza, the first one was 147, the second one was 143, and the third one was only 60-meter high. And if you look to the Orion belt, it is exactly the same dimensions between the three pyramids. The Giza pyramids, of course, is still one of the mysterious that we still have nowadays, and lots of excavations go through them in order to know more about them. I would like to jump from the fourth royal family to the New Kingdom, because we could say that this is a very important era in the Egyptian history. Between the fourth royal family, from the fourth royal, fifth and sixth royal family, this is what we name it the Old Kingdom. Then we have what we name it the Middle Kingdom, and Egypt was quite flourished, but it wasn't as flourished as the New Kingdom. The New Kingdom started by the 18 royal family. And we knew before the 18 royal family, we have people named the Hyksos invaded Egypt and they stayed here for almost 150 years. And a pharaoh named Ahmoses, get rid of them, and he established a new capital for Egypt in Luxor. And Luxor is about 900 kilometers to the south of Cairo. In Luxor, or Thebes as it is known in the books, and it was one of the most flourished capitals ever in the history of Egypt. I would like to talk about a man who was one of the most famous pharaoh and one of the most famous pharaohs for us as well, King Akhenaten. How was King Akhenaten? He was one of the rulers of the 18 royal family, and he's pretty famous because he was the first one in history who believed in only one God. During the pharaonic time, they were believing in many different gods and goddesses. They were believing that, they have God Emin Ra, the local god of Luxor. They had God Ra in Memphis. They have many different deities, minor ones for the small provinces. But when King Akhenaten became the ruler of Egypt, he decided to get rid of all the gods and believe in only one God, and he named it God Aton or God Eton. And he depicted, like here in the picture, like a sun disk with the rays comes out of it, but it ends with human hands. And sometimes these human hands hold what we name it the key of life and put it in front of the nose of the king to give him the life again. King Akhenaten was pretty famous because he moved his capital from Luxor to a new capital to be away from the influence of the high priest of God Emin Ra. Also, you could see that the art during the lifetime of King Akhenaten was pretty different than the art we had during the 18 royal family. For example, during the 18 royal family, they were always believing in idealism. The king should look very strong, very young, with muscles. But if you look to the illustrations that we have here in front of us, you would notice that even the shape of the body of the king and his family looks totally different. They were believing in realism, but they exaggerated a little bit. So his body looks like, a male and a female in the same time. And maybe also that had a religious purpose. They thought that maybe he was the only high priest that connect all the people. This is why he has to look like a male and a female in the same time. We know that he didn't rule for a long time. He ruled for about 17 years. Then his elder son ruled for 2 years only. And there is a theory that he was killed in order to allow to his son, King Tutankhamun, to become the pharaoh. And we have two theories actually about this very, very famous king for us. One of the theories said that he was his son. Another theory said no, he was one of the sons of the concubines in that time, and he got married to one of the daughters of King Akhenaten to become the pharaoh of Egypt. Anyways, Tutankhamun ascended the throne of Egypt when he was 9 years old. So he was a little boy, and it was pretty easy for the high priests of God Emin-Ra to control him and actually to convince him to move the capital back to Luxor and to change the cult from God Aton to the main local god of Thebes, which was God Emin-Ra. We know that King Tutankhamun, his name was first King Tutankhamun, according to God Aton, the god of Akhenaten, and he changed his name to Tutankhamun. And he ruled for almost 10 years only. So he died when he was 19 years old. We could say that he was an important king. He didn't achieve anything. He didn't do any wars during his daily life, but he's still the most important king for us during the pharaonic time because of the discovery of his tomb in the main cemetery of Thebes, the Valley of the Kings. The tomb of King Tutankhamun was discovered with the beginning of 1922 by two Englishmen, Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon. And we could say it is the last tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings. In this cemetery, we found so far 62 tombs, and the tomb number 62 is the tomb of King Tutankhamun. We could say it is the only tomb was kept intact with everything was found inside it. We found about 5,000 pieces of artifacts inside the tomb of the king. Actually, they were made of wood and coated with gold, and we found so many jewelry. Some of the things were made of pure gold. If you look to the left-hand side here, you can see the design or the layout of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. That was really one of the smallest tombs we ever found in the Valley of the Kings. Here is another, a picture of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. You would notice that the walls were plain. The only decorations we have in the tomb was in the burial chamber of the king. They didn't have the chance actually to finish the tomb of King Tutankhamun because he lived for a very short time. We do think also that this tomb wasn't belonged to him. It belongs to a priest. His name was Ai, and because of the sudden death of King Tutankhamun, he was buried here. We do have also other theories about the death of King Tutankhamun because people, believe that maybe he was killed because he started to think exactly the same like his father, and he started to believe in only one God. So maybe the high priest of God, Emin-Ra, killed him. And the proof, they said that when they examined the body of King Tutankhamun, they found a hole in his skull, in the back. And when they examined it, they found that maybe it was a head of an axe. But another theory started to appear recently, and they found out that maybe he fell down from his chariot, maybe he was hunting or he was, walking around by his chariot, and he fell down and he had a gangrene in his leg. Maybe he died because of this gangrene. Maybe he died because of, he was killed, but he's still the most important pharaoh for us. I would like to show you a little bit of the things we found inside the tomb of King Tutankhamun. This is how we found everything was bagged inside the tomb. If you look to the picture here to the right-hand side, you can see some of the boxes which was containing his, his jewelries, his clothes. We have also here to the left, we have some of the beds. And underneath the beds, we have these, containers which was containing his food, chicken, goose, ducks, everything he needed in order to survive or to eat in order to survive in another world. Also, we have some of his chariots. We found 6 chariots inside the tomb of King Tutankhamun. They were made of wood and coated with gold. Again, here another picture of one of the beds and the boxes we found underneath it. And here to the left hand side, we found a larger number of these boxes, about 36 of them, and we found a larger number of the statues that shows King Tutankhamun while he was standing, holding the symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt, hunting, fishing, doing so many different things he get used to do during his daily life, and he wanted to repeat it again in the nether world. Another photo here, and if you look to the picture to the left-hand side, you can see the containers of the perfume. And perfume for the ancient Egyptians was very, very important thing, because they get used to use it during their daily life and take it also with them to the nether world to give it as an offerings for the gods and goddesses. And do you remember the lotus and papyrus? They get used to make the perfume from the flower of the lotus and papyrus. And it's so interesting. In one of the temples we have in Upper Egypt, this temple named the Edfu Temple, we found also illustrations shows the tell us exactly how to make the perfumes, how to mix between the flowers and use the ounces in order to produce a new kind of perfume. If you look to the right hand side, you can see Howard Carter when he was cleaning the mummy of King Tutankhamun. And actually, the mummy of King Tutankhamun and the coffins we found inside it is really one of the most interesting things we found inside it too. Look to the next picture here. You could see the burial chamber of the king. You could see the container of the body, which was we name it a sarcophagus. And here it is made out of quartzite. And inside it we have a coffin. And inside this coffin we found the mummy of King Tutankhamun. But it's very, very interesting because we didn't find the mummy of King Tutankhamun directly in the sarcophagus and in the coffin. If you look here to the next slide, that explains more how we found the mummy of King Tutankhamun. You would notice that we didn't find the mummy only directly inside the sarcophagus, but we found it inside many, many shrines. Actually, we found shrines like, boxes made out of wood and coated or gold plated. We found 4 in each other. If you heard about the Russian doll, this is how we found these boxes inside each other. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Inside the innermost one, we found the sarcophagus, which made out of quartzite. When they opened the lid, they found inside it a coffin made of wood and coated with gold or gold plated. They opened this one and if they found another one made of wood and coated with gold. Then they opened it, they found a third one made out of pure gold. And it weighed 110 kilograms of gold. Inside this one, we found the mummy of King Tutankhamun. When we found the mummy, this is actually the picture of the shrine, the outermost shrine. And inside it, we found the other ones. This is the mask of King Tutankhamun that we found on his mummy. And the mummy of King Tutankhamun wasn't like all the mummies we found in the Valley of the Kings. We normally found just the mummy inside the coffin. No, here they added the death mask of the king in order to give an extra protection for the face of the king. And they added also for another purpose, because they always think about, the soul leaving the body and comes back to it to allow him to relive again. But they start to think that after the mummification, the features of the dead person vanish completely. And of course, after adding all the wrappings around the face, so that would make it pretty difficult for the soul to know him again. So this is why they added the death mask of King Tutankhamun on the top of his face. It blurs his features and it makes it pretty easy for his soul to recognize him. The most interesting thing about this death mask, that it weighed about 10 kilograms of pure gold and is decorated by precious and semi-precious stones. Look at that. This is a very interesting picture also because it shows us the mummification. And the mummification was a very, very important process during the Pharaonic time. For them, it was so important to build a very, an amazing tomb, but also it was very, very important to preserve the body, because without the body, the dead person cannot relive again. If anything happened to the mummy, he will not relive again. He will vanish in another world. So this is why they made the mummification during the pharaonic time, and the most complete process of the mummification, of course, was made for the pharaohs. They bring the body after the death of the person. They take all the organs outside, all of them except the heart. They leave it in the body. Then they take the brain through the nose by an iron hook. They hollow the body from everything could cause the decomposition of the body. Then they cover it with the salt from inside and outside and leave it in the salt for almost 40 days to dehydrate the body completely. Then they clean it from the salt. Then they start to add the perfumes. They add the bandages of the linen wrappings. They add amulets, of the gods and goddesses to give extra protection for the mummy. And then they cover the face with the death mask and put it in a coffin and then inside the sarcophagus. Well, this is I choose the most important pictures, or, the nicest pictures from the Valley of the Kings in order to give you an idea about how the tombs in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor looks like. This is one of the pictures from the tomb of King Ramesses VI. You can see how the walls are so ornated with many religious inscriptions in order to protect the body of the king. Another one from the tomb of Ramesses I. And the last one here also from the tomb of King Ramesses VI. I would like to jump now to the 19 royal family and give you a small idea about a temple. We name it Abu Simbel Temple. If you heard about it, this temple is situated to the south of Egypt, or to the south of Aswan, about 350 kilometers to the south of Aswan. And this temple belongs to a king named King Ramesses II. He's really one of the most famous also. He ruled for all over Egypt for almost 67 years. And we know that he, restored so many temples, and he added many different statues for himself in all over Egypt. This one, I could say, it's really one of the most important, because this one was carved in one of the mountains exist in this place. They carved the four statues, which facing, or, representing the facade of the entrance. And then they carved the inner part of this temple. This temple was dedicated for King Ramesses II and God named God Rahur Akhet. Each one of these statues was 21 meter high. Actually, this temple was in a great danger after the building of the high dam in 1960, and they found out if they leave it in its place, it would drown and sunken underneath the water of the reservoir of the high dam. So with the beginning of 1964, they decided to move it from its place to a higher place, about 200 feet from the original place, actually. And if you look here to the next slide, that it represents for us, or shows us how they cut the temple, all the temple, into blocks of stone. And we could say that each one of these blocks would average between 20 tons to 30 tons of limestone. And they moved it all the way up to the actual place we have nowadays. After they cut the temple, they said, if we add like blocks of stone on the top of it, maybe it would crash the temple. So they came up with a great idea: the building of a dome on the top of the temple, and then add the rocks on the top of it in order to look exactly the same, like the shape of a mountain. It's not a real mountain, it's solid from inside, but it gave us the shape, the final shape of the mountain. We have here a lovely picture of the interior of the temple of Abu Simbel. This is a picture of the sanctuary of the temple of Abu Simbel, and it's very interesting because here in this temple we have an event happen twice a year. The sun goes directly to the face of the king twice a year, in the 21st of October and the 21st of February. These are these 2 days are the day of the birth of the king and the day that the king ascends the throne of Egypt. After the moving of the temple, this day or this event delayed only 1 day. So nowadays we celebrated 22 of October and 22 of February. The most interesting thing that when the sun goes directly to the sanctuary, it goes to the face of King Ramesses II. Then it goes to the two next, gods next to him. It never ever hits the face of the god to the left hand side, because this god to the left hand side, he's god Habi, and he's the god of the shade. So this is why the sun never ever arrives to his face. We do have also here another picture of the interior of the temple, and you can see how amazingly, the statues were carved in the mountain, and they were attached to the pillar. Even the ceiling was beautifully decorated with a vulture shape and the snake, or as we name it, the Wajet, and she was a goddess of Upper Egypt in that time. King Ramesses II didn't build only a temple for himself, but he built also, this is actually his mummy and how we found it in the Valley of the Kings. He built another temple in the same place for his wife, Queen Nefertari. Actually, we have Nefertiti and Nefertari in the Egyptian history. Nefertiti, she is the wife of Akhenaten, and Nefertari, she is the wife of Ramesses II. She was his beloved. He loved her so much, and for the first time in history, a pharaoh built a temple for his wife, and he built it next to his temple. He built her also a beautiful tomb in the Valley of the Queens in Luxor, and her tomb, we could say it is the most beautiful tomb we ever have in Louvre, Egypt, and is still preserved in a very, very good condition. Well, this is the last slide we have with us today. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and it was really lovely being with you today.
That's lovely, Rasha. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much, Verona.
It's really fascinating, and it's beautiful information, and how it's really amazing. We all enjoying it. It's really, we receiving comments as well from people how they really enjoying it. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And now we can start taking questions.
Yes.
So we have quite a few, not that many, but yeah, we're still receiving them. So
Okay.
I will start with the first question from Chrissy. She asking about how long did it take to build a pyramid? The
Actually,
pyramid. I think she meant the Giza one.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
The Great Pyramid on the plateau of the Giza, it took them about 20 years actually to build it. And as I told you, it's only like 4 months every year, about 100,000 of the workers to build this pyramid. So actually, without any machineries or tools or like technology that we have nowadays, it took them all in all 6 years. It was, yes, 20 years, but it was only 4 months every year. So it was all in all, if you calculate it, only 6 years to build a pyramid. But it depends also on the size of the pyramid, because we do have pyramids, they are only like 40-meter high. We have some pyramids, like the Great Pyramid is 147. So sometimes it takes them like 20 years, sometimes it takes them only like a couple of years to build it.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. And also, we do have another question saying, how long did it take sorry, no, that's another question. So the another question is, how old was the oldest known Egyptian?
Well, we know that we found evidences that Egyptians lived in Louvre, Egypt, almost 7,000 BC. So we're talking about almost like 9,000 years ago. These are the oldest evidences we found in the desert, that it tells us that we had people lived in Egypt in that time. Maybe we have older than this, but we didn't have evidences, dating back to to earlier than that time.
Nice. Thank you so much. And we do have another question from Talwa. She asking, saying, what best tours would you recommend for Egypt? So if people would like to go and visit Egypt, what's your recommendation for them to go, where they should start, and where they should go?
I think if you would like to come to Egypt, you have to cover the main sites in Cairo, Luxor, and Aswan. So if you come to Cairo, the Giza pyramids is a must. Saqqara is a wonderful place to visit. Also, the Egyptian Museum is wonderful, and actually, we do have a new museum is about to be open in a year from now. We name it the Grand Museum. It would be fascinating one actually to visit. Then cruising the River Nile and look between Luxor and Aswan is a must. You're going to see all the main sites in Luxor, like El Karnak Temple, Luxor Temple, the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens. Then you would stream down the River Nile. You would visit Itfu Temple, Komombo, then you would reach Aswan and you see the Philae Temple, and you would have the chance also to visit Abu Simbel Temple.
Yep, and also for your information, so we added all the contacts for Russia. So if you wanted to get in touch with her, you will have on the chat her website and email addresses. So if you wanted to get in touch with her, she will be happy to have and answer your questions as well.
Thank you so much.
And our next question is from Judy. She asking, saying, is there only one family in pyramid? Like, is it the only one family who's built the pyramid?
Actually, each one of these pyramids was built for only one person because they looked to the king as the son of the god. So he was a god. So it wasn't allowed for anyone to be buried inside the pyramid except him. So the Great Pyramid on Giza Plateau built for King Khufu, and he's the only one who is buried inside it. The second one built for King Khafra, and he was the only one who built inside it. Then Mycerinus for only one person. And this is the case for all the pyramids we discovered so far.
Nice. Thank you, Rasha. And there is a question from Courtney saying, is it true that there was a curse, like Lana, on Tutankhamun tomb?
A curse. Okay, well, no. This is one of the rumors about King Tutankhamun, actually. But just imagine a tomb was closed for, or was sealed for almost like 3,000 years. And if you open it, there is lots of bacteria inside it. So it infected actually the body of the first excavators who who entered to the tomb. So what happened was that many of them died by many different diseases. Yes, some of them died by accident or things like this, but that was only, it wasn't like a curse or anything. For me, I entered the tomb of King Tutankhamun many times. I'm not cursed so far. So no, actually no. This is only like, a theory about, or maybe something, like people would like to make it like attractive for people, mysterious. But of course, there is no curse in the Valley of the Kings or the tomb of King Tutankhamun.
Yeah, me too. I went over there and I'm still alive. So it's all good. So we have another question saying, when did Egypt stop having reality?
Royalty?
Royalty, yes.
Well, we could say that Egypt didn't stop until the beginning of 1952, actually, because we do have a royal family ruled Egypt to the beginning of 1952 when we had the revolution and Egypt to start to be a republic. So it was pretty close. But if you're talking about the pharaonic time, we could say that the end of the pharaonic time was 332 BC when Alexander the Great invaded Egypt, and he was Greek, he was an Egyptian. And since then, the Ptolemaic time or the Ptolemaic era started here in Egypt till 30 BC. Then we were occupied by the Romans, who stayed here to 641 AD.
Nice. And we have another question from Charlene. She asking, saying, do you have any idea how many mummies are still haven't been found?
Oh, just imagine how many pharaohs we do have. Imagine how many high officials and royal families, we didn't discover so far, because the mummification was performed for all the people who could afford it. It was for the pharaohs, but also for the high officials, royal families, the high priests, all these people were mummified. So I think we still have thousands and thousands of them still, hidden underneath the sand of Egypt.
Yeah. Cool. And there is another question from Elvira. She asking, when did Egypt decide that would run their country with king and queens?
We cannot say specifically when, but we could say that the politics in these times, during the pharaonic time, was always like, if we have a pharaoh, if we have a king for the place, so why not? And a king was because they looked to him as the son of the gods. So he was like, the people that would respect him and would never get rid of him until he died. And we could say that the kings and the queens who ruled all over Egypt in that time, they were, respected, and they were, the people who should run everything belongs to the people in that time. So we cannot say when they started that. It was only, the politics of the place which tells us, that they need a king and a queen, or they don't need a king or a queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. And another question from Julia. She asking, saying the man dressing attending the mummy appeared to be totally hairless. Could you please explain this? Like why people like used to shave their hair and why they appear with like hairless?
Actually, the high priest supposed to, to shave their hair, beard, and mustache. That was a kind of purification in that time. Even the king himself, he's supposed to shave his hair, his face, and his beard and everything. And they always get used to wear hair wigs because it was kind of like that they are clean. So hair wigs was always wear during ceremonies, and we found so many of the hair wigs actually, and they are displayed in many different museums, especially the Egyptian Museum. We have a great collection of the hair wigs.
Yeah, I remember I visited like Pharaoh's village, and they actually offering us to wear these wigs and try it on and just dress up. It was fun. I remember that
Oh
was one
yes.
of the, yeah. I remember I
Yeah,
visited when I
Pharaonic
was young.
Village is an interesting place also because it imitates the old life and it shows you even the daily life of people.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
have another question from Anita. She asking, saying, what is the best time to go to visit Egypt? And how long will it take to visit all six cities?
Okay, I could say winter is really the best time because we don't have a really bad winter here. The degrees, it's always average between 22 degrees to 16 degrees. So it's always really nice. And we could say from the beginning of October to the end of March. This is the best time actually to visit Egypt. And I could say it needs you about 15 days to visit to cover the six, main cities like Cairo, Alexandria. You could visit Aswan, Komombo, Edfu, and Luxor.
Nice. And also, we do have a question from Vidya. She asking, say, it is said that anything related to King Tutankhamun is supposed to be cursed. Is it true? So I think the same question like the one Courtney
Yeah,
like
no.
about Tutankhamun and the
If you
Lana.
go to the Egyptian Museum, you'd see many of them, and you could see them every day, and nobody cursed so far. Yeah.
Good. And another question from Marie. She asking, saying, what time of year is the best to visit? Which is, I think we covered this one as well. And Flora asking, saying, how many percentage do you believe that there is still undiscovered temples?
We always say that we still have another Egypt hidden underneath, our modern Egypt, because even in the middle of nowhere, sometimes they build buildings in many different places, and while they were digging, they found, treasures. The ancient Egyptian civilization extended for almost 5,000 years. And just imagine, we do have so many of the things that they didn't discover yet.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Rasha. And another question from Barinika. She asking, saying, are tourists allowed to visit the tomb?
She means I think she means
Like,
the Giza pyramids and the Valley of the Kings. Yes, it is
yeah,
allowed for
yeah,
people
and
to go inside. It has like an extra ticket to go inside, but you could go inside and you could even taking pictures.
yeah. And there is another question, and I think that will be our last question from Sawati. She asking about how many mummies are received and how many pyramids are still standing.
About the pyramids, we do have 120 of the pyramids. They still remain in a good condition, although we do believe that we have so many of them is still hidden because recently they found the pyramid and it looks like only a heap of sand because all the blocks of the stone were stolen a long time ago. So they found it by chance. They were digging and they found that that was a real pyramid. About the mummies, we discovered more than 300 of them until now belongs to the pharaohs, but we found so many also belong to the high officials and the high priests. They even found one belonged to one of the common people as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very good. Thank you so much, Rasha. I really appreciate that you came. I know the time now in Egypt is like you started with us, it was 4 a.m., which is I really appreciate that you are here with us
Thank
and
you
came
so much.
especially to
Pleasure.
share your knowledge with us. It's much appreciated. Again, all the contacts for Rasha, it's on our chat now. So please don't hesitate to contact Rasha if you have any more questions. It has been pleasure to be with you, Rasha, and has been pleasure to run this program through Casey Cardinia Libraries. So looking forward to see you all during and with all our events. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
No, it was my pleasure being with you today. I enjoyed it so much, seriously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.